This tutorial is on how to paint a lilac. So grab a small or large brush and some purple paint, and we're going to mix up a nice little lavendery, lilac-y kind of color in our mixing well. I like to mix my colors up before I start to paint, so I've got a few of them started here. And with every little stroke that we do, we're going to be adding a little bit of a variance of these colors. So we're gonna start with a pretty wet paintbrush, and I dab some of your excess water off just so you can get a nice clean line. And we're going to start with the shape of a lilac. So all we're doing with our brush is simply dabbing the brush on the paper. And what this does is it creates these tiny little lines that will eventually kind of bleed together and make a loose image of a lilac. And I think I'm gonna grab a little bit more of that more pinky purple, because I think lilacs have that nice grape color to them. So we're gonna start with the outline, and we're going to simply be placing our brush in these various positions. And while we do that, we're going to kind of create this cone-like shape all the way up our page. I'm gonna add some water so those look a little bit more uniformed. Maybe add a little bit more pink into this mixture. And I'm going to kind of come up to a point here and then bring these back down, continually adding water. And then the shape of these last little petals come down this way instead of looking up towards the stem. And that way you can kind of follow where the stem would be and how these petals would lie on this branch. After you've got your outline done, you're going to grab some more pigment on your brush, a little bit more color, and you're going to just go in and follow those lines that you had drawn with a variance of color, keeping and turning your paintbrush with each little stroke. And you can kind of see the darker pigment will tend to kind of bleed in with that lighter wash that we did for the outside, which is a nice, really cool, nice little effect. And you're gonna just keep going around. Now, if you imagine, oh, I got a big spray on my page. If you imagine the stem of this flower going straight through, then all these petals are kind of connected to this stem in various ways. And we're gonna follow that stem line then down. So some of your petals might be facing straight up, some of them might be kind of coming out. Some of them are going to be poking down, because this is where the petals would begin, is down here on that green stem. And you can add a little bit more water to your brush, but in the inside of this kind of cone shape, you should see a darker pattern of color happening. And if you find yourself leaning towards one color, I kind of like to do maybe a darker, I'm doing like a more indigo kind of shading on the left side to represent a little bit more of a shadow. And to represent the petals being further away, you'll add more water. And to represent the petals being closer, you'll add more pigment. So with each little brush stroke, you're just kind of filling in where you think these petals might be within this little composition and letting these kind of colors bleed together. And from there, we're gonna add the stem. So we're gonna mix up a little green and add the stem on this guy. which will go straight through the whole flower. So you're gonna start at the base and do a nice C curve coming up through the flower. And I like to kind of break this up by doing each little stroke in between the petals, so it's not running all the way through, but you're kind of just dabbing to make the illusion of that line. This is a really dark green color. I might add a little bit lighter, a little bit more of a lighter shade to this. And then you're gonna add some leaves. So I'm gonna add these C curves in at the base of my flower. And I'm going to add these leaves by adding pressure and using the belly of my brush, and then releasing the pressure and coming to a fine, fine tip. And doing the same thing on this side is adding pressure, 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 and then coming to a fine, fine point that way. You can kind of move the water around a little bit and manipulate your paints. And sometimes I like to come back with a darker color and just touch it to the base or to the tops to add that nice little bleed. And we're gonna do one here. So we're gonna start with light pressure, press the belly of the brush and release. And again, we're gonna start with the light pressure, press with the belly of the brush and release. And that's another little leaf. And sometimes with these little guys, I like to add some petals behind because it gives the illusion of this kind of plant growing in a cluster or in the middle of the bush, how it would naturally grow. So I might add a little green there in the back. Manipulate that water and that pigment to kind of move around. And I might add some more small little leaves off this stem, kind of wherever you like to place them. Again, the illusion of a leaf or a petal further away will be with the lighter wash, and then adding the darker washes for the petals you think that might be, or leaves you think might be closer. These shapes are a little bit more round, the shapes of these lilac leaves. And you can kind of fit them in wherever you see fit with your little composition. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little stem for this guy because he looks like he's a little naked on that side. I like a full flower. So that is our little lilac, and you could add a cluster or a bunch. You could go ahead and do another one on this side if you'd like, and do a smaller little version of your lilac. They could be growing out of the same side, or you can leave it how it is and just do a single lilac, which is also really, really pretty. And just play around with how the shape of your brush acts and reacts when you're at a higher or lower angle. At a higher angle, you're gonna get a smaller little dab. At a lower angle, you'll get kind of more a longer and more uniformed looking petal. There's my second little lilac. He's a little fatter and a little shorter. They're all a little bit different, these perfectly imperfect petals. And I'll add his little stem and connect it to the larger parent flower. And then we've got a little grouping of lilacs.